Hello everyone, and welcome to the FRS GT Series. I am your host Roy Weller, and tonight we are in Japan at the Suzuka Raceway for round 7 as Marvin Helgert leads the championship. We are underway in qualifying as our drivers are on the way to set the first of the flying laps for tonight, as I believe the first driver to finish their flying lap will be driver right here, Ewan Stitchbury, number 11, or the number 22 car. He crosses the line and sets a benchmark of a 2 minute 1 second, 0.4. We should be seeing times dropping below that as we get our first lap from our championship leader Marvin Helgert in the Lamborghini Huracan Evo 2, 159.6, setting the benchmark that the other drivers will be chasing. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see some cars getting into the 158s tonight. There's a solid early lap from Helgert, as we have got representative times now from both the silver and the bronze splits now. The current leader of the silvers being this man right here, Connor McDermott, number 12 car. And leading the way in the bronze now is Guido Montegino in the new McLaren 720S Evo. It's improved aerodynamics. And while we have the time, while the drivers are setting their flying laps, worth pointing out that Marvin Helgert leading the way in the championship by almost 50 points at the moment, almost an indisputable lead at the top of this championship, with Lasse Stregg in P2. Driver who's yet to set a lap in this qualifying session and is on an invalid lap at the moment, so this will not be it for Stregg. And leading our gold split is Christophe Demey, who also has not set a fast lap but is on one at the moment, just coming through 130R into chicane at the end of the lap. Brings us just on to the final corner, and we should see what sort of lap time to expect from our gold split leader. Should be a solid lap as he crosses the line. It is a 2:08, sorry, 0.8. Christophe Demey into P3 at the moment, with just over 7.5 minutes remaining in this qualifying session. Leading the silver split at the moment is Christoph Gergely-Bakos, who up until a few races ago was in the Audi, has now jumped over to the new Ferrari 296 and is doing equally well in this car, as just trying to see where Gergely-Bakos has come in our previous races. Actually, since switching over to the new Ferrari, has posted some of his best finishes yet of the season, with a 10th out in Watkins Glen and an 11th in Imola. Yet to get a time on the board, and well, won't be getting a time on the board with this lap either, as he heads into the dirt runoff. But needs to get himself composed again and get out there and set a lap. And then leading the way in the bronze split is David Lee, with a new livery tonight, switching over to Tenet's KRO FTL Corsa. And is currently leading the bronze split by over 50 points as well. So as long as no major issues, should be on for a split win of the championship here for David Lee. It's really the gold and the silver splits where we have got the closer battles, as Christophe Demey has not got much of a lead over Ewan Stitchbury, who is going strong in this qualifying session, just two positions on the grid away from his championship rival. So we'll be wanting to find a little bit more pace out there. As now the majority of our drivers do have a time on the board. And now is just the time when these drivers want to be trying to get some improvements to their lap time. One driver who should be getting a considerable improvement to their lap time, though maybe not of position, is Gökhan Akdeniz, who crosses the line, gains 0.6 of a second over their previous best attempt, but remains in P7. As Conor McDermott rounds the final corner and has got some time in hand, and this could see him jump considerably up the order as he crosses the line and goes to the top of the silver split. Be very important for his... Ooh, wow, that is one hell of a power slide around the first two corners. I mean, it looks spectacular, but that is not going to be fast, especially as he did take himself off the circuit and therefore will not be setting a valid lap this time around. But I'm not sure that's going to matter too much, as he is currently 1.5 seconds down on his previous best. As Stragger rounding spoon curve, the fifth time, still yet to get a valid lap on the board, is perhaps not prioritised getting a banker in early on in the session, has perhaps compromised himself a little with only 3.5 minutes remaining of this session. Needs to get a time on the board and then he can start chipping away at that, but it's probably going to only have a couple more attempts after he crosses the line. So we'll see what this time is as Stragger crosses the line. It's going to be quick. 1:59.5 puts him P3 for now. He's going to have a chance for one, possibly two more laps depending on the traffic ahead of him. And has really put himself under pressure. As Kevin Nordemir is finding his feet, finding some pace, currently sitting on a 2 minutes 2.1. Has got plenty of time in hand now on this current lap. Would see him jump up to around the P6, P7 mark if he keeps this delta up. And just a few more corners remaining of the third sector. Into the chicane. Tight entry to the chicane, but it's fast as he comes down towards the start finish line. This should see him jump into the 150, or sorry, the 20, or the two flats I should say. See exactly where this puts him. P7 for now, but is very close in behind Lightbody and Demey. So a real opportunity here for Nordemir. Can have one more lap to see how far up the standings he can jump. As Christophe Demey crosses the line, jumps back ahead of Lightbody, so now finds himself sitting at the top of the gold split again. So that is going to be very important for his championship, as Tom Lightbody currently sitting in P3 in the gold split and only 1 point behind Ewan Stitchbury. So that will be a battle we try and keep an eye on during our race here tonight, as David Moniz rounds the final corner, is looking for an improvement here. A couple of places behind the leader of our bronze split at the moment. As he crosses the line, it's a 203.1, definitely an improvement in time, but not in position. As still has around a second to find if he wants to challenge that time set earlier in the session by Lee. As Lee crosses the line again with a 202 flat, and that puts him up to P13 for now. Some other drivers still on laps could possibly jump back over him, but that is a solid qualifying time for the bronze split driver. Conor McDermott has found 0.6 of a second on this lap, but is unfortunately invalidated and will have to return to the pits. Not completing that lap will be a disappointment for our silver split driver, as he was looking on for a big old improvement there, which could have seen him jump up amongst the gold split drivers, but alas has to settle for P11 as Strager, his final attempt at a flying lap, is currently sitting half a second off of Marvin Helge, so that time perhaps being unattainable for our Mercedes AMG driver, but needs to find just over 1.5 tenths in order to jump ahead of Thomas Spike, so that will be his target for the rest of this lap. Comes down at the big long back straight towards 130R. Just a slight lift, chuck it into the apex, manages to keep it. Oh no, he doesn't. He runs out of track limits, and that is attempt over for Lasse Strager. He knows it. Off into the gravel he goes. There's now just a couple more drivers looking to improve, as Stephen Tutt, on his final opportunity to improve, has currently got around a second in hand. The Lamborghini of Nordemir ahead, perhaps providing just a little bit of a tow down this back straight. And well, with the time he's finding on this lap, could be enough to jump Tutt ahead of Moniz. He comes around Spoon Curve onto the long run down towards 130R. Looks like it's the best exit he's had so far in this session, gaining time all the way down the back straight. As we head into 130R, kick up of a dust from the Lamborghini ahead, hopefully not too distracting. We head into the braking zone for the final corner. Heavy on the brakes, clips the first apex nicely, through the second apex. Hard on the power, keep it tight to the line, doesn't have to worry about setting up for another lap now. This is all just going to be to see how can Tutt move himself up the bronze order and puts himself up into P17 as the session ends, and we will be back in just a few short moments for tonight's race. Welcome back. As our drivers line up on the grid, we have just enough time to go through our starting order for tonight's race. On pole position, we have got Helget. Alongside him will be Spike. Behind we've got Strager and Track. In fifth, DeMay. Alongside him is Stitchbury. Then have Lightbody and Nordemir. Klein, Actonitz, McDermott, Matai, Lee in P13, Spit, Bakos, Montanino, Tutt, Royal, Moniz, and rounding out our grid for tonight's race is Struthers, as our drivers pull away from the starting grid to head away onto the formation lap. We are just a few short minutes away from the green flag for tonight's race. As all our drivers have departed from the starting grid, it will be Marvin Helget who leads us around this long circuit here at Suzuka. Plenty of time for the drivers to get some heat into their tyres, as it is just approaching midnight track time. So the track has not had sun on it for a while now, and will be quite a consistent track temperature for the drivers. Shouldn't take them too much to get their tyres up into the range necessary. Shouldn't be too hard on the tyres either in terms of tyre wear this race. A point worth reminding everyone watching, if you are new to the FRS GT Series, that we do have a mandatory pit stop for tonight's race with fixed time refueling, which means the drivers will have to spend a minimum of 25 seconds refueling the car, but no need for these drivers to I say no need, no requirement for the drivers to change their tyres. Of course, some may decide to do so. Suzuka can be quite an abrasive circuit, especially with that fast flowing first sector and the high loads put under the pressures through 130R. So it will be interesting to see who does opt to switch the tyres as we approach Spoon Curve, about 2/3 of the way through our formation lap. You see there the brake lights of some of the drivers, just trying to get a little bit of heat into the brakes, a little bit of heat into the tyres. Going to be important on the short run down to turn 1 and 2 here at Suzuka. Is a place where often drivers do get caught out by that braking zone, as you're approaching it at a much lower speed than you would be in the rest of the race at full speed conditions, and some drivers just having to do the calculations on the fly as to when they need to brake, depending on how many cars they've got in front of them and what speed they are approaching that corner at. So going to be interesting to keep an eye on the middle of our pack here as we come braking down into turn 1. Although we have got a little bit fewer drivers than we have had in previous races, so perhaps not the recipe for absolute carnage that it could have been if we had our full complement of drivers for the FRS GT Series. But nonetheless, just a few short corners now away from the green flag here at Suzuka, as Marvin Helget leads us round to start this race. Will Thomas Spike be able to take advantage of that outside line, the extra grip, the extra speed he can carry through that banked corner? Or will Streger or Track seek to take advantage and get the jump on Spike? And we've got the 5 red lights illuminated now. We wait for those to flick over to green. And we are racing at Suzuka. Marvin Helget with a decent reaction to the lights, but it looks like it's Streger who's got the best start there, as he's up the inside. Spike running wide, and that is Streger through up into P2 as well. We've got some yellow flags out at the back, and it looks like It's David Lee who's really lost out here at the start. What happened here at the start has been pitched around and it's now facing the wrong way. So after such a strong qualifying for Lee, it's unfortunately fallen apart at the first corner. That will be disappointing for the Ferrari driver. Up at the front, it is Streger chasing down Helgert. And they've got a little bit of a gap back to Spike, who is currently at the head of one hell of a train, all the way back to P11. And now Streger all over the back of the Lamborghini of Helgert. As we have to disregard our timing tower there. David Lee is certainly not leading the way in this race after that first lap incident. I think just has yet to reach the end of the first sector. He currently finds himself 28 seconds back from our number 19 car. As we come down towards 130R, it is Sven Klein who is eyeing up an overtake on Kevin Nordemir. Not going to be opportunity through 130R. As they all make it through the corner, some wider than others. It's all looking fairly neat and tidy for our first batch of cars. As Royal makes his way past Tut, and there's contact behind, and wow, a whole cascade of contacts behind. There's what's happening here? So it's Royal up the inside of Tut. Nice move there from Royal, but just a little clumsy, I think, from Tut, just to make a couple of contacts on the rear of Royal. Royal round, and has to get himself back underway. And Tut now falling back now down into P17. And under pressure from Struthers. As Muniz is round. So what has happened to David Muniz? Is there contact? Nope, just gets hooked on the curb. On the inside of the S's, that spins him round, and needs to be careful not to rejoin in front of another car, and that's painful to see for Muniz. As we have got an overtake for P16 as Struthers makes his way past Tut. What has happened here? Oh, as Tut has run wide onto the gravel, so that has just allowed Struthers to tuck his way up the inside and up into P16. As Nordemir is currently heading up a train of cars from P8 down to P12. He's just dropped off slightly in terms of pace from Ewan Stitchbury. He's about 2 seconds up the road in front of this pack, and it is Sven Klein who's on the charge. Seems to have the pace at the moment. Has got a good exit from final corner and is right on the back of the Lamborghini of Nordemir. Nordemir goes defensive to the inside. Klein all over the back of the Ferrari, but also of the Lamborghini, but not able to find a way through at the moment. But has got a good exit of the second corner, side by side now into turn 3 as they approach the start of the S's. Slight contact made between the two of them, but both get to continue on their way cleanly, but that has allowed Actonets to catch up behind. He's now on the back of Klein as they wind their way through this first sector. It is Nordemir ahead of Klein and then Actonets in this battle for P8. As Nordemir taking a very similar line across the dirt that we saw from Tut earlier, but managed to bring it back onto the racing surface actually quite easily, and well, didn't actually lose too much time there, impressively. The amount of gravel being thrown up, I thought certain that Nordemir was going to lose out on at least a position, but must have just been a couple of wheels out onto the gravel. as he continues to lead this pack around. As we have a change in position behind, as Matai has got his way past Brad Spitt. Oh, and Spitt just getting his wheels out onto the gravel there on the run up to Spoon, and that allowed Matai through up into P11. As it looks like something may have happened with Ewan Stitchbury, who's dropped back quite considerably from Tom Lightbody, who he was in a battle with before, and now puts him right in front of Kevin Nordemir. As Nordemir comes around the final corner, as we've got yellow flags out for Matej. So we come into the hairpin. Matej just taking a little bit too much of that first apex curb, pitches the Porsche around, and well, finds himself on the escape road that well, those who follow Formula 1 will remember Nicholas Latifi trying to drive down in 2021. But less intentional there from Matej, as Tom Lightbody has caught up to his gold split compatriot of Christophe de May, and is looking to make an on-track overtake. We come round through the Degners. You see just in the background that trio of cars being headed up by Ewan Stitchbury, followed by Kevin Nordemir and Sven Klein. There's this battle we are tracking right now, with Tom Lightbody chasing Christophe de May for P5 in this race, both in the Ferrari 296, so equal machinery under both drivers. This is going to come down to driver skill, whether that be in how they drive or how they set up the car. But at the moment, both looking evenly matched. There's quite a wobble there from Tom Lightbody on the exit of the second curve of Spoon, and that has compromised his run down towards 130R. Both drivers using the apex curb at 130R. They head into the final chicane, not much separating them. It does seem that de May getting the slightly better exit. And there's still a long race, still just over 50 minutes remaining in this race. So Tom Lightbody continuing to apply the pressure to Ewan Stitchbury for the gold split lead in this race. Behind them, battle continuing over P7 as Kevin Nordemir continues to chase down Ewan Stitchbury. So they come through the S's. This trio of cars seeming quite evenly matched in terms of pace, with Nordemir just a little late on the brakes there, as it looks like that is Christophe de May around. And there's a very unfortunate place to try and get himself back facing the right direction. What has happened to de May? It looks like a spin in the Degners. Is this self-inflicted? Seems like it may have been, not a car around him. Oh, and just running wide of the apex there, spinning right in front of the path of Ewan Stitchbury. Not much Stitchbury could do to... Oh, sorry, no, that was Tom Lightbody. Not much Lightbody could do to avoid having impact with the back of de May there. And de May now finds himself running in P17 after having to allow so many drivers back past him, with that very unfortunate place to be facing the wrong direction. As Christophe de May will try and make his way back up the order towards where he should be. Sven Klein is continuing to pressure the back of Kevin Nordemir. This for P7. Sven Klein getting ever closer, but yet unable to find a way to position his car alongside that of Nordemir. Just behind we also have a battle over P3 in the silver split. As Florian Mattei is trouble in the back of Christoph Gurgly-Bakos, the driver who is currently leading silver split in the standings, and Mattei looking like he's got the pace through this first sector of the track. Looks to the inside and looks like Dermot's had a little bit of a struggle in as Bakos and Mattei make contact into the first of the Degners. So see that again from the helicam. It's Conor McDermott getting a bit out of shape, which perhaps distracts these two drivers, as then Bakos and Mattei come together. Mattei able to keep it on circuit, and Bakos into the gravel, sees him drop down into P17. As the battle for P6 continues, with Kevin Nordemir just dropping back ever so slightly from Ewan Stitchbury, but this trio has actually caught up to Tom Lightbody. I think that spin from DeMay and the slight contact, they're bringing Lightbody back towards these drivers. So now we do have a four-way battle over P5 in this race, as they snake their way down the start-finish straight to start the 7th lap of this race, as Marvin Helge seems to be checking out in the lead of this race, currently a couple of seconds ahead of Alas Streger, and then those two having the considerable lead over Thomas Spike. As now Florian has cleared Bakos, is now catching up with Conor McDermott, who did seem to be struggling through the first sector on that previous lap. Has managed to maintain his pace a little better on this lap. But Mattei closing that gap down. As McDermott with the power slide through the second of the Degners. This could present an opportunity to Mattei. He tries to look to the inside. He's going to have to be heavy on the brakes, confident there. Little bit of rubbing, but that's all fine. And Mattei through up into P12, and that is P2 in the silver split. Good racing from the pair of them. McDermott not covering the inside of the hairpin. That's what allowed Mattei through. And keeps hold of P12. So Florian Mattei. Next car up front is Guido Montanino. And then Brad Spitz, his silver split compatriot. As Ewan Stitchbury, having caught up to Tom Lightbody, is now right under the wing of his fellow Ferrari, and contact made. Not sure what was happening there. As we maybe go on board with Stitchbury as they head into the braking zone. Stitchbury just, I think, Lightbody just perhaps out-braking himself there, having to get the car slowed down for the second part of the corner. That has allowed Nordemir through, as Stitchbury seemingly disappeared there. As Sven Klein making his way past, trying to make his way past Stitchbury, but actually out onto the gravel. Not making it stick this time, but that was contact made from Stitchbury onto the back of Lightbody, which now means Kevin Nordemir is now leading this pack of drivers up into P5 in this race. And now needs to use the opportunity to try and drive away from that squabbling pack behind, as Sven Klein is chasing on the back of Stitchbury. Stitchbury, who seems to have his rain lights on, I do believe. You can see the flashing light there on the back of the Ferrari. But unless my eyes do deceive me, I believe we do have no rain at the circuit at the moment, and none expected for the rest of this race. As Christophe Demey is recovering after that earlier spin down in the Degners, now finds himself on the back of Conor McDermott, right into the slipstream. Is he going to try and move into 130R? Wouldn't recommend it. Not the sort of corner you want to be trying to make a move, but carrying the speed through 130R. Ran out a little wide through 130R, had to back off. That means not going to be able to catch on back of Conor McDermott and make an overtake into the chicane. Has to hang on for another lap, as McDermott holds on to P13 in this race. But Christophe Demey getting ever closer, looking for a route through. As up ahead, Sven Klein. It's closed right onto the back of Ewan Stitchbury. Looking to try and get a better exit from the hairpin, taking the wider line on the throttle. It's a long run down towards Spoon Curve. But, certainly a risky place to try and make a move through this curve. Most drivers do tend to try and use the entirety of the track as they come through Spoon. Both Stitchbury and Klein keeping it tidy, as Nordemir just ever so slightly ahead of these two. As Demey gets the move made on McDermott in the hairpin, a little bit of a door bang, and they're now onto the back of Demey, who has the backmarking Maniz for company. We'll see blue flags coming out from the marshals to allow these two drivers through, and they are through as we rejoin the live action. Christophe Demey, next car on the track for him to try and overtake is Florin Mattei. Has a good run out of 130R, not close enough to affect a move into the chicane. It's going to be all about this exit and the run down towards the first two corners. Demey keeping it tight. He's got a good run, perhaps not going to be close enough to try and attack into the first corner. He's just picking his way through the field after that unfortunate spin down in the Degners a few laps ago. And must be frustrating at this point for Demey, just having to exercise some patience. Knows he's out of position, but this track with some very specific places where you can make a sensible overtaking attempt. For the rest of the lap, you just have to kind of sit in and be patient behind the driver ahead of you. Let's run out of the Degners towards the hairpin. Demey taking the tighter line. He's got a good run out, and I wonder whether Mattei just letting Demey go through. Knows he's not necessarily racing for class position, doesn't want to have to be driving defensively. Christophe Demey up into P12. Next on the road is Guido Montanino, who is having a phenomenal race, leading the bronze split, showing some real good pace here at Suzuka. And yeah, is completely unthreatened from the rest of the bronze split grid. It's back up in P5. It's still Kevin Nordmit leading the battle ahead of Jon Stichbury and Sven Klein. This race really looking like one where drivers having to wait for a mistake from the car ahead of them. And with just less than 40 minutes remaining in this race, still plenty of opportunity for these drivers to lose their concentration, which is especially easy when you're running only under the headlights of your own car. Sometimes be tricky to spot your braking markers, especially if you've done all your practice in the daylight conditions. As they head through Spoon Curve. One of those great double apex corners of this Suzuka circuit. Such a easy corner to make a mistake on, both on entry and on exit, with the deceptive elevation changes. Very easy to just slip the rear of the car out from under you. There's Nordmit taking a little bit of dirt on the apex of the entry of the chicane. May compromise his run down towards the first corner as Jon Stichbury slightly closer than he has been on the past few laps, but still not going to be the opportunity to make a move. As we have yellow flags out again for Christophe Demey. What has happened to Demey? Oh, just pulling off the circuit at 130R. I'm not sure what the issue was there for Demey, but letting a number of cars through. As we now have a battle for the lead of this race. Lasse Stregg has closed up calmly and quietly to the back of Marvin Helge and is now running the Lamborghini driver all the way through up to Spoon Curve, runs wide out onto the runoff. That is going to give Helge a little bit of breathing room, but has not got much of an opportunity to relax. Stregger now starting to breathe down his neck, as Jon Stichbury is also caught right up to Kevin Nordmit. So seeming like the lead two, or the first two Lamborghinis on our field under pressure from the cars behind them, as Jon Stichbury getting closer and closer to Nordmit as Marvin Helge dives into pit road, gifting Lasse Stregg the lead of this race. As Kevin Nordmit picks up a drive-through penalty for track limit violations. Easily done here at Suzuka, but that is going to hurt the rest of his race, especially with the pack so close behind him. And Jon Stichbury going to be looking for a move down into the first corner, although perhaps just realizing that he doesn't need to make a move on track now, as Kevin Nordmit will have to peel off into pit road soon in order to serve that drive-through penalty. And that will give positions to a number of cars behind him on track. As now's the time for Lasse Stregg to start putting in those fast lap times while he's got clean air in front of him, as Marvin Helge emerges from the pits into P15, some 5.5 seconds behind Christophe Demey, who's currently battling with... Oh, sorry, he's not. He's caught on to the back of this battle between Matt Royal and Conor McDermott. So Christophe Demey likely to get held up in a little bit of traffic here. And see how long it takes for Marvin Helgert to catch up onto this battle. Because this could be exactly what he doesn't want to get caught out by. What is that car we can see in the background of this battle? It's the number 66 car, oh, which is Bakos, as we've got yellow flags out for Matej out into the gravel at Spoon Curve. Oh, and this is what I was saying about Spoon. It's one of those corners where just because of the elevation change, it's so easy to just tap the rear of the car slightly out of alignment with your line through the corner. And that is Florian Matej now down into P16. As Christophe Demey and Matt Royal racing each other into the pit lane. Nose to tail as they come through there. And, well, Marvin Helgert will be happy to see that as he now gets a bit of free track ahead of him. 4 seconds up the road to Conor McDermott. McDermott, who, well, gets himself out of the way of Marvin Helgert as well with a little bit of a spin through turn 2 by the looks of things. Yep, gets the car all out of sorts onto the grass on the inside of turn 1 and 2 and is now up on the runoff area and, well, needs to spot himself an opportunity to get back on the track. As, well, unfortunate there for Tom Lightbody, who emerges from the pits in P15. Picked himself up a stop-go 30 penalty for his troubles. And is going to need to serve that in the next few laps. Can only imagine that is for speeding into the pit lane. As Streg pulls into the pit lane to make his mandatory pit stop and stops in his box, car up on its jacks, and we'll have to see where is Marvin Helgert. He's coming round Spoon Curve at the moment onto the long back straight towards 130R. This is where the battle for the lead, well, at least will be decided for now. Marvin Helgert comes down towards the chicane. And Streger still stops in his box, I believe, just moving away now. Coming back out onto circuit, we should see Marvin Helgert in the background just coming down the start-finish straight. So Lasse Streg has made it work for him, has held on to the lead of this race. And that undercut from Helgert did not pay off, although, that being said, Helgert's tyres will now be up to temperature, up to pressure, and we'll see, can he bring down that gap to Streger over the next couple of laps while Streger warms up those tyres. As Sven Klein is chasing down Ian Stitchbury, as Nordmir unfortunately having to abort from this battle after serving their drive-through penalty for track limit violations. This is the battle over P5, I believe. Once all the pit stops are sorted. And just for information's sake, we take a look at the amount of time stopped in their box for our respective leaders. Streg stopped for 32 seconds. Helge stopped for 36. Possibly means Helge has taken tyres and Streg may not have done. So this could all change by the end of this race, as Marvin Helge, in theory at least, with the fresher rubber, we may see Lasse Streg starting to struggle by the end of this hour. But at the moment, Streg actually pulling away from Helge. That gap now up to 4 seconds. As the majority of our drivers have made their mandatory pit stop, just Spike, Klein and Montanino to go. As Streger caught up to the back of Montanino. This for position on track, although not for net position in the race, as Montanino still yet to pit, but does mean that Montanino might not get out of the way quite so easily. Doesn't have to, but yep, gives Streg the space, and Streg will be pleased by that. Doesn't lose out too much time to Helge behind, and this is just what he needs from this part of the race, just to keep it going, not lose too much time. Florian Mattei looks to move himself forward. He's now stuck up behind Struthers after that earlier spin. He was doing so well battling his way through, but now Florian Mattei with his work to do all over again. Behind these two, Conor McDermott, having made his mandatory pit stop, now finds himself behind Steve Tutt, coming through the S's. Silver split driver trying to find his way past the bronze split driver of Tutt. Tutt not making it easy as they come up towards the Degners. Conor McDermott to the outside, but Tutt has it covered. And goes a little deep, a little wide out into the dirt. And that has allowed McDermott through. But Tutt not losing too much time from that. Can get to carry on. He's currently holding on to P3 in the bronze split. So now with only one driver left to take their mandatory pit stop, as Thomas Spike dives into pit road, the last of our pitters, with 25 minutes of this race remaining. As soon as he emerges from the pit lane, we should see our current order for tonight's race, as Florian Mattei closing on to the back of Struthers again. So they come down the start finish straight. Mattei looking like he's got a good overspeed here. Just catching onto Struthers. Has a little look onto the inside, but not going to be the space there available. The slightly smoother line through the first corners. Has just not got quite enough of a pace advantage to get past Struthers at the moment, as Guido Montanino, the leader of our bronze split, has emerged from the pit lanes ahead of Kevin Nordemir. Nordemir having had to serve that drive-through penalty before he made his pit stop. Now somewhat out of position, trying to battle his way back up, and has got the bronze split driver of Montanino as his next car on the track, as Bakos, our silver split championship leader, picking himself up a drive-through penalty for his troubles. He's going to have to serve that in the next few laps, and that's going to see him drop down the order. Could potentially lose P3 in the silver split to Florin Mattei with that drive-through penalty, so it could be very costly. There's another drive-through penalty picked up this time by Steve Tutt. There's Kevin Nordemit, looking like he's got the faster run around the final corner, using the outside line there to his advantage, carrying the overspeed. He's got the position made before the first corner. Montanino not wanting to give this one up, looking to the inside, but far too far back to make a lunge there. And that is Kevin Nordemit up into P9 in this race. And looking forward to Brad Spitt, who's currently 12 seconds up the road. Might be a little bit of a tall order there for Nordemit to try and recover any more positions in this race. But with just over 23 minutes of this race remaining, I'm sure he won't be giving up. There's Christophe Demey is also on the back of this battle, and going to want to try and make his way past Guido Montanino as they head up towards the hairpin. Deep on the brakes for Demey, up the inside of Montanino. Montanino looks like he's going to allow it as they run up around the curved back straight towards Spoon. Montanino just dropping back, allowing Demey the space, and that is Christophe Demey up into P10, and crucially P2 in the gold split. Apologies, somewhat confusing with both the platinum and the gold split here sharing the same driver tags. So for your information, it is Ewan Stitchbury leading the way in the gold split, actually followed by Ewan Stitchbury. So Ewan Stitchbury leading the way, followed by Gökhan Akdeniz, and then Christophe Demey. So Christophe Demey actually in P3 in the silver split. So this will be hurting his championship points against Stitchbury as we head into the final round next week. As Demey tries to find a way around Nordemir, very close to making contact with the back of the Lamborghini there. Does well just to keep his foot on the brakes and avoid contact. As they wind around the S's. And Christophe Demey trying to find a way past Kevin Nordemit. Needs to get this move done quickly if he wants any chance of catching up to the back of Stitchbury and Akdeniz before this race is over. But Nordemit, platinum split driver, is also trying to push his way forwards as Demey takes the inside line, compromises him slightly on exit, allows Nordemit to get the run out of the corner to head down towards Spoon. Demey looking like he's got the pace at the moment, got the control of the car, certainly driving his lines well, making good use of the track, but as of yet not able to find a way past Nordemit as they come down towards 130R. And Demey really needs to try and coax a mistake out of the Lamborghini driver. As Demey dropped back quite considerably there, obviously late on the brakes into the chicane. Not quite sure. There didn't look anything wrong with the line there, but just dropping a couple of seconds to Nordemir. Not sure if we're seeing hardware issues for Demate. We did see him just drop off of track earlier. But closing that gap down again. There's Nordemir driving across the dirt. That is going to allow Demay to get alongside and pass now through the Degners. And that's Christophe Demay up into P9. Ahead of Kevin Nordemir. He can now set his sights on trying to catch up to Brad Spitt. Although I think any chances of catching up to Stitchbury and Actonitz before the end of this race is looking pretty slim, as Actonitz a full 25 seconds ahead of Demay. As we saw yellow flags out for Ewan Stitchbury. I think that may have just been a slight off track going through 130R. We take a look at this. Oh, takes a lot of the inside curb at 130R, runs himself wide over the runoff, but collects the car well, and well, almost seems to lose no time at all. Again, gets himself right on the back of the Ferrari ahead of him. As Florian Mattei again trying to find another way past Struthers round the outside, makes it stick, and is ahead before they get to the braking zone of Spoon. Clinical there from Mattei, and that is Mattei up into P13. Again, some way back now off of Royal, so we'll have to settle for P3 in the silver splits. And as our field now starts to spread out a bit as we approach into the final quarter of this race. Lassestrick leading the way. Now that gap back to Helga sitting at 5.5 seconds. Seems that after the pit stops, the pace of our championship leader has just dropped away ever so slightly. Not sure if perhaps just accidentally picking the wrong pressures for his tyres for Helga, because not showing the sort of pace that he had earlier on in the race. Best lap we've seen from Helga, sitting at a 1:59.4 in the first stint, and his previous lap a 2 minutes point 2. And well, last lap some 2/10 off of the pace we're seeing from Streger up front. So Marvin Helga with some work to do if he wants to try and reclaim the lead of this race. Although could also be just Marvin Helga opting to settle for P2 in this race, as he currently has a dominant lead in the championship. Doesn't want to risk too much and trying to go for the race win. The car ahead of Helga, that of Conor McDermott, gets nicely out of the way. Should just drop in behind Helga as they run down towards 130R. Now sitting in the slipstream, but Marvin Helga still dropping back further. I think this lap may be even further off of that of Streger. Come round to cross the finish line, it was a 2 minutes point 5 from Streger, whereas 2:01.3 from Helga. That gap extending, and this looking like well, barring any sort of mistake, This is quite a dominant display from Lassestreg. As our closest battle on track is actually that of James Struthers and Matej, but Matej also driving away from Struthers on that previous lap. So I think we're just winding down now into the final section of this race, as everyone has settled into their pace order by the looks of things. As currently leading the way in the silver split is Brad Spitt, and Spitt, well, is currently sitting a good 60 odd points off of Bakos in the standings, so is not really in contention for the split championship, but with a strong result here, and perhaps it's not a strong result when we go to Mount Panorama for our season finale next week, has got an opportunity to try and take P2 off of Colin McDermott. And again, for our bronze split leader, I don't think there is a chance of Guido taking the championship off of David Lee. Well, actually, I say don't think there's a chance. It is actually a mathematical impossibility, unfortunately, for Guido, as over 50 points is the gap between the two. But we'll definitely take a big chunk out of that gap with a split win, and what's looked like quite a dominant performance from Montanino after that first lap incident for Lee. Montanino has been leading the bronze split for the entirety of this race. As we do have a battle out on track for P14, as Conor McDermott has caught right up to James Struthers. He's now pressuring the Aston Martin driver. These two not racing in the same split, but this is for track position, and neither driver is going to want to yield to the other. And Conor McDermott battling his way back through the order after a couple of incidents earlier on in the race, having to sit in the runoff and allow cars by with that spin at turn 2. Now needs to pick his way through the traffic. As McDermott makes his way past Struthers before they even reach 130R, and now has a 5-second gap to make up to try and take the final podium spot for the silver split off of Florian Matej. So we'll keep an eye on that gap for the rest of this race. As Thomas Spike has been closing the gap to Nat Track ahead. And looking like the AMG Mercedes really coming to life at the end of this race, looking after their tyres well by the seams of things. There's Thomas Spike closing down on the Ferrari of track. 8 tenths was the difference in their lap times last time around, and with just under 10 minutes remaining of this race, every opportunity here for track to try and take that final podium position in the overall result off of Ferrari driver. as Thomas Spike taking to the gravel ever so slightly. And you can see the target ahead of him. This will be just egging Thomas Spike on. He knows there's not much that he needs to do in order to get that final podium position. As the pace of the Ferrari ahead does seem to just be slightly dwindling. That's been slightly harder on its tyres than the AMG Mercedes. As Thomas Spike looking like he may just be slightly overdriving the car to come through the final sector. As a reminder of our order, it is Lasse Stregg leading Marvin Helge by just over 10 seconds now in this race. That gap has been widening all throughout the second stint of this race, with Lasse Stregg really finding his rhythm and finding a lot more pace in this second stint than he did in the first. Although that being said, Marvin Helge still holding the fastest lap of this race, so we'll take that point away from Lasse Stregg unless he has something to say about it. But the battle we are watching now is between Nattrack and Thomas Spike for P3. And last time around, it was actually Nattrack who was 2/10 faster than Spike. These two trading lap times. And Track just needs to avoid racing in his mirrors at the moment. That gap wide enough where Thomas Spike shouldn't be too distracting for Track, other than a infrequent, blink of the lights in the mirrors. As this gap begins to close, especially in these nighttime conditions, it can always be tricky to try and spot where the car behind is, and that's when they start to get in your head. As Christophe Demey has closed down the gap to Brad Spitt, now less than a second behind. And Demey will just want to try and pick his way forward in the overall standings in tonight's race. As Demey currently sitting P3 in the overall standings in the FRS GT Series Season 3. So will want to try and pick his way forward, pick up as many overall points as he possibly can, and well, that is P8 for Christophe Demey as Brad Spitt runs very wide through 130R. So another handful of points for Christophe Demey, which will be invaluable in his battle in the overall standings, as Thomas Spike looking like it's going to at least take 12 points for P4 in tonight's race. But would really want to try and pick up another 3 for that final podium position. As we got yellow flags out for Track, who is off in the... And Spike, distracted by those yellow flags, has an incident all of their own. What has happened here? We come through 130R, Nat track with the big old slide. And I think Thomas Spike just getting distracted by that, has a slide of their own off into the barrier. Spike is the one who's able to recover better from that initially. But I think there was contact with the wall there for Spike, so that could be considerable damage to the front of that car. And with just under 4 minutes remaining in this race, see if they can hang on to that third place position. Just have to hope that damage is only cosmetic and aero, and that collision with the wall didn't do anything to the suspension of that car. As Bakos has now caught on to the back of James Struthers. As Struthers has had to contend with a stream of silver split drivers throughout this race, and well, has always handled himself admirably, has been defending well against the drivers of the faster splits. It is Bakos who has that incident earlier on in the race, now trying to move his way forward and looks to the inside for the first of the spooned curves. Got the car slowed, managed to hug the inside line, looking for a good exit of Spoon, but it is Struthers who's potentially got the better run. But it would be a brave driver to try and go for an overtake into 130R. So I think Bakos is going to be able to hold on to this one. As up ahead of these, Conor McDermott has now caught Florin Mattei, caught and passed, I should say, before the first corner. So that is Conor McDermott up into P3 of the silver split. Just trying to get as much of a points advantage over Bakos as he can in this race. Currently sitting just 38 points. Yep. 38 points behind Bakos. Needs to get as much of an advantage as he can over Bakos if he wants any chance of taking the championship. As Mattei dropping right back from McDermott after McDermott made his way through. As after the earlier spin, Netrack now down in P4. That has been gradually closing that gap to Thomas Spike ahead. The lap time advantage last time around was about 2 seconds to track, so perhaps the damage to the front of that Mercedes hampering the pace of Thomas Spike. And with Lester Strode just about to cross the line to make this race have one more lap, Lester Strode now onto the final lap of this race. Does mean track has got a bit of an opportunity to try and close down this gap. Just hope from a small mistake from Spike could bring them back into this. Although with the gap sitting at around 5 seconds at the moment, it's looking unlikely. But well, we did have that shock spin from the both of them through 130R just a couple of laps ago, so nothing is impossible. As now Bakos has made his way past Mattei. As Mattei really looking like he's struggling. I wonder if that Porsche is low on fuel and Mattei just having to lift and coast into the corners to try and make that fuel last, because that looked far too easy for Bakos. He's now up into P14, and its next will be Struthers to try and make his way past Matei. Yep, quite nice and easy through the inside. Yeah, I think Matei is just having to back off with low fuel at the moment. That does not look like the pace of a driver going flat out. And Struthers now closing right on to the back of Bakos. Struthers with that lovely Zelda themed livery tonight. Special livery for Suzuka. But coming across the line now to finish the race and take the checkered flag and the win is Lasse Stregg with a dominant final stint of this race. Early on it was looking like this race could have been won by Marvin Helge, who led the entire first stint, but after the pit stops it was Lasse Stregg who had the pace and just drove away from the Lamborghini of Helge. As Thomas Spike got a little bit of traffic ahead of him for company, as that is Bakos and Struthers lap down battling for position. Spike just wanting to keep out of this one, but that is allowing track. You can see in the background did manage to catch quite considerably onto the back of Spike, but not enough to take the final podium position. That will go to Thomas Spike in P3, followed by Natrak in P4. Then to cross the line in P5 is Sven Klein, followed by Ewan Stitchbury in P6. Going around the corner to the final corner to take P6 is Gökhan Akdeniz. Good drive from Akdeniz. Not involved in too many battles tonight, but a solid performance to bring it home in P6. The driver who has been in the battles all throughout after an early incident is Christophe Demey. Good recovery drive from the Ferrari driver to bring it home in P7. Next on the road is Brad Spitt, who will take the Silver Split win here at Suzuka. He will be followed by Kevin Nordemir, who after an earlier incident has to settle for P9. And then crossing the line to take the win in the bronze split will be Guido Montanino. Congratulations to the winners of all of our splits. That is the end of our race here at Suzuka. The FRS GT Series will be back next week when we have our finale at Mount Panorama. So if you want to be reminded of that, please do remember to like and subscribe. I've been your host, Roy Weller. And until next time, have a very lovely rest of your day. Goodbye.